What's up, y'all? You're listening to a little post-game recap from the Eagle Sports Crew following Texas A&M's 52-10 win over New Mexico to start the 2023 season. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined always by Travis Brown and Robert Cessna, breaking down the action. Guys, I think the story of the night was the A&M offense and just the way that they came out and continued to execute, and Conor Whitman, the night he had, and some of the weapons that, where he was able to use throughout the game.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think you got to talk about the offense. Wasn't everybody talking about all offseason? Bobby Petrino, this and that. What's he going to do? It's hard to say how much he did. I think he did a lot because just the fact that the offense was so smooth. Whitman and his receivers, they look like they've been together 25 games, not 5 games. And the running game, you could say, okay, but you look 4.6 per carry. I was really actually somewhat surprised by the offense.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing there is their ability to not only throw but connect on the deep ball. If you look at the entirety of the 5 games that Conor Whitman played last season, he completed 5 passes over 20 yards. This game in 3 quarters, he matched that. And 2 of those were for touchdowns. And, not to speak in complete hyperbole, but it's a quarterback performance that A&M fans haven't seen for a really long time on a multiple amount of levels. It's the first time a quarterback has thrown 4 touchdown passes and a half since Nick Starkel in 2017. It's the highest completion percentage an A&M quarterback's had since Kellen Mond in 2020. It's the most touchdowns scored in a game since Johnny Manziel in 2013. I mean, those are some impressive numbers and some impressive quarterbacks of years past. And it was New Mexico, but it was still a pretty good performance. And particularly what stood out was those deep passes.
Something that Conor mentioned after the game was, Bobby Petrino's philosophy, feed the studs. And that's exactly what A&M did. They went to Noah Thomas. They went to Evan Stewart. You look at the targets, Evan Stewart led the way. He had 8 catches for 115 yards. He had 11 targets. Safe to say they connected with him pretty often. Noah Thomas, 6 targets, 6 catches, 74 yards. 3 touchdowns. First A&M receiver to have 3 touchdowns since Christian Kirk in the Belk Bowl, 2017, his last game with A&M. First Aggie to have 3 touchdowns and a half since Mike Evans tore up Auburn in 2013. I'd say that's pretty good company for Noah Thomas, a guy that we've heard a lot about this offseason.
Yeah, you also look about it, no drops. There wasn't a lot of drops. We've seen before just people drop ball. Whitman, except for maybe one throw, was on the money all the time. New Mexico continued to blitz people when they weren't getting enough pressure on Whitman, even though he hit him a couple times. They one-on-one and putting Thomas out there and those guys one-on-one. They were open literally just about any time, every time. And the fact that they never had drops, it seemed like just a matter of time that they were going to score.
Something else that was really talked about this offseason was how would A&M's offensive line potentially progress? And, we were kind of wondering, who's actually going to run out there, too, at that starting 5. And, once they got that group out there, they had a pretty solid night. And Jimbo said, having a clean pocket really allowed Conor Whitman to make some of those good throws that he had throughout the game.
Yeah, you start a true freshman in Chase Basantis. You also have Mark Nobu out there, which was a guy who saw some significant time, but I don't know if any of us had penciled in for the starting lineup for this game. Both of those guys started. You simply, going back to what I said, you can't have any kind of vertical game without having good offensive line play. And then here's the other thing that you can say about the offensive line. It's a good offensive for the typical traditional sports journalist. It was a good offensive line game when you don't really think about the offensive line. There was nothing that stood out as, oh, hey, that really hurt them, that play, that whatever. They were able to run the ball well enough, and they were able to have enough time in the pocket to hit those deep balls. And then if you want to talk about, too, wide receivers making some really good blocks on some blitzing, picking up guys left and right. You had number 4
For A&M?
For A&M.
Amari Daniels.
I don't know why I forgot his name. I'm turning into Cease over here. Yeah. Yeah. You had, on that first touchdown play, you had Amari Daniels sliding over and picking up a big block on that play. So, it's good pocket presence, good clean pocket, and Conor Whitman had a lot of time to throw.
I think A&M's night on offense kind of overshadowed a pretty decent night on defense. They gave up a couple big plays here and there, but overall it was a pretty decent outing for A&M's defense as well.
I was kind of smiling to myself, and I think other people were, when they opened up with 10 plays, like 46 yards in almost 7 minutes, and the place got a little quiet, even though New Mexico didn't score. You're thinking, oh man, we've seen this before, and then one time they did a 27-yard run or whatever. But to go ahead and quote you as well, the interception, New Mexico starts out, picks up 2 third downs, then the rest of the way they're 1 for 10 on third downs, and they did put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And you could tell they broke that New Mexico offense. And without a doubt, the defense is overshadowed. And that's okay. When you've seen a lot of these lopsided games, when one side of your team is overlooked or taken for granted, that's a good thing. That's because other teams playing so. A&M hasn't had that. A&M hasn't played complimentary football. The defense can't be smiling and saying, hey, we got a solid B, but the offense was so good. We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, Edrin Cooper said it felt like a weight kind of off the defense's shoulders because there was so many games last season where the defense, if they were going to win, was going to have to carry the team. And so that pressure was off them a little bit today. Cease, I think the $100,000 question here is how much do you think a performance like that, from what you saw today, carries over into a legitimate competitor in a Power 5 competitor in Miami next week, and how much do you think this is, hey, it was New Mexico?
A combination of it, Travis. I was thinking that same thing. Just think when I walked out of here last year at this time, because that was so ugly, that win over Sam Houston State 31-0. But this was so much different because they played a lot of guys, and all those guys played well. I think New Mexico is a below-average team, but they made them look that way. That's the bottom line. A&M didn't do that last year to Sam Houston State. A&M's got to be very confident. Their fans got to be very confident, and that's the way to go on the road. I get it. That puts no points on the scoreboard down in Miami for next week to start out with, but they go in there with confidence, and they didn't go anywhere. We saw they weren't even confident going into Appalachian State last year. So now the confidence, nothing beats confidence. And I feel, I like this schedule all to start out with because I thought they could beat New Mexico bad. Well, now they did. Now if you just go down there and win by 1 point, because you're right, Travis, it's a Power 5. You just got to win that game. Now, they'd like to win by 3-4 touchdowns, don't get me wrong, but now the goal is just to win. And Jimbo talked a little bit about the basics. You just win one game at a time, learn and go on. They learned a lot today. I think we all learned a lot.
Two more things to close it out. First, going back to the offense, too. If you look at the passing chart from last season, like 80% of the passes were in the middle of the field. 0 to 10 yards, 10 to 20 yards, just right in the middle of the field. Today, they were completing passes left, right, center, deep. So it's not as easy to just plant a couple of defenders in a zone and say make them play and pass to places they don't want to play to. And I didn't look. There's not on here, but curious to see what the duration of game time was in this game, because it did seem like things moved a little quicker, but I also didn't really notice any of the rules changes when it comes. Of course, we didn't have any penalties at the end of the first and third quarter, but I didn't really notice the difference in the clock stopping and not stopping after first downs. It didn't seem like a drastic change in the game.
Yeah, it wasn't a close game either, so everybody's kind of relaxed. The outcome, like I'm laughing at halftime, you can write a game, and usually, like last year, a lot of times, what are we going to write about? This game's so ugly, it's like...
I think back to Monday, Anaya Smith said A&M didn't want to play down to its opponent's level. A&M was favored by what, like 35 in this game? Yeah.
35 and a half. When you looked at 38 and a half.
The bottom line is, A&M was favored big, and they won big. It's something they haven't necessarily done in season openers recently. And I think if you're A&M, this is exactly the kind of game that you wanted to put together to start the season. That's just kind of how I felt the bottom line was tonight.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. If you want to nitpick, it's like you're dating, Miss America. You go, you got a little kernel of popcorn in your tooth. Really? Come on.
I think we need to that should end the video. That's an ender right there.
All right. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage from tonight's game. And We'll see what Mr. Cessna has to bring for us next week. Thanks, y'all.